Thank you. Hallelujah. I come down from the mountain and surrender. Wow, I never thought my small mind couldn't imagine standing before you here today. And I brought a box of Kleenex because I'm already feeling it well up. Yeah. But one morning, I was laying on my massage table with my crystal light therapy above me, meditating, and I clearly heard Spirit speak to me and say, "Call Reverend Claudia and ask her if you can speak one day while she's gone." And I went, whew, shut the lights off, got up, went to the phone and said, "Claudia, I'm being guided to ask if I can speak one Sunday while you're gone." And she said, "Oh, that's interesting. Tony and I have just been speaking about who we're going to get to fill in on October 1st because Tony can't be there." And so she said, "Let me talk to Tony and I'll call you back." So she hangs up the phone and my small mind goes, "Please say no, please say no, please say no." And she calls me back and she says, "Tony and I would love to have you speak." And I'm like, okay, well, several years ago, I did a short talk on divine purpose at the World Day of Prayer. I said, I have all these notes on it. I said, so I can speak on divine purpose. And so I hang up the phone and I go into my file system looking for my divine purpose notes. And because I was recently thinking about moving, I had thrown them all away. So I sat down and I said, okay, God, now what? So I opened up my iPad and this is what was there. Linda, are you searching for your purpose? All of us, at one point or another, embark on the journey of discovering our reason for existence. But let me share a simple truth with you. Your purpose isn't something to be discovered. Your purpose is what you are inspired to do right now. Because all desires are God's desires. However, the ego often distorts these desires, transforming them into personal ambitions. In their purest form, desires are yearnings to experience the divine within us in new and enriched ways. Remember, the essence of your desires is the feeling they invoke, not the physical form they take. So how about giving all your desires back to the universe by allowing them to manifest naturally? Your purpose is in the present and in the choices and actions that inspire you in this very moment. Embrace your inspirations and let God guide your journey. Live in the present and let your heart guide your purpose. The universe is always conspiring in your favor, in peace and light. Aaron Apke, and Aaron Apke was one of my teachers in the Course of Miracles, so thank you, Aaron. I want to dedicate this talk today to my son, Jeffrey Hunter Baines. Oop, wrong photo. There he is. Love you, dear. And it's his inspiration that has brought me where I am today. So I will be sharing some things about my story with the caveat that my story is not who I am. I am not my story. And growing up, one of my favorite memories that I have was going outside at night, and we had this rowboat, so I would take a blanket out there and I would just go lay out by this rowboat and stare up at the universe. I loved the stars. I loved looking out there, and my imagination would run wild. I'm like, well, how far does this go? Is there a wall? What's on the other side of the wall? Is it space? You know, and I'm like, I'm such a small piece of this. What part do I play in this universe? So it was always such a divine, special moment for me, and to this day I love stargazing. But that was really probably one of the nicer points of my life. At a very young age, my father was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. He was an alcoholic, and at a very young age, I was instilled with fear of becoming what he had acquired in his health, fear of the delusional outbursts that he would have. I mean, from a very young age, I remember him waking us all up in the middle of the night and saying, "Get up. The world's going to come to an end. We need to get on our knees and pray, or we're going to be vacuumed up in a vacuum cleaner." So as sad as that sounds, my mother had looked into putting him in a hospital because at one point the delusional outbursts had gotten so strong that he began to see demons and devils and spiders and snakes crawling all over him, to the point where, as a young child, I had taken that fear on. That fear had engulfed me to the point where I had nightmares for nearly 50 years around the devil coming to me. I would be speaking in the middle of the night, "Jesus, save me." And, excuse me. So by the age of 14, my father's alcoholism had gotten worse. He had been in and out of mental hospitals. My mother, only having about an 8th grade education, never really knew how to help us as children. There were 5 of us. And we never really had any guidance. So anything that I had taken on through my mind, on how to deal with this. And by the age of 14, in one of my father's drunken stupors, he brought another woman home to the bedroom. As I knocked on the door telling him to leave the house, he wouldn't leave. I called my mother, and I said, "You need to come home from work." So she did, and they divorced. But again, I had no one to speak with me on how to cope with this. In that divorce, I had taken on shame and guilt and blame for what my parents had done. And we had 2 small homes, so they separated. I went to live with my mother, but still the love inside of me wanted so much to help my father that one day I went to my father's house and I said, "I really want to help you." And he had been completely drinking all day. And he said, "I don't want your help. You need to leave. I don't love you. You're not my daughter." In those few words, I literally, I think, began to spiral out of control. By the age of 14, I was babysitting 4 little kids down the street, cooking, cleaning house, and she was a drug dealer. So I began drugs at the age of 14. By the age of 15, I had become pregnant with my childhood sweetheart. By the age of 16, my mother and I were not getting along. And because I was pregnant, they, again, more shame being piled layer upon layer of guilt and fear and shame, they sent us away to the YMCA for pregnant girls. Because back then, that was shameful if you got pregnant. So my mother and I had gotten in a fight, and she just said, "If you don't like the way I run my household, you can leave." I picked up my baby, I grabbed a garbage bag, and I walked out the door. And I never went back. Life was not easy. I worked hard. I had a friend who had a mother that owned a lot of rental homes. So she rented me a home. I had help from the state, and I knew that that's not the way I wanted to live my life. I knew that I could do better. I knew that there was something else out there. And I kept striving. What is my purpose? Why am I here? I must, and back then my purpose in my mind was, well, I must be to get married, to have children, to raise a family. That's all I was ever taught. That's what you're taught. And so through the struggles, I raised my son, my first son, Michael, on my own for about 11 years. I got married when I was 28, and things were good for a while. I had 2 more children. My son, Jeffrey, ended up with ADHD. It was very much a struggle. My husband didn't really deal with it well. He was very verbally abusive. I wanted counseling. He refused it. And I began to lose love for him. So I started thinking, I need to get a divorce. And in that time frame, my friend at that time, who I considered my closest friend, whom I was confiding in, was seeing my husband. And 6 months after my divorce, they married. It gets better. The story gets better. It's not all about the story. I'm laying this out so that you can kind of get an idea where I was at mentally. About a year later, I met a wonderful man who I worked with, who I dated for about 10 years. And again, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, my purpose is to be married, right? That's what I was taught. And I didn't see that happening. And something was pulling me to Florida. And as it has it, I ended up in Naples, Florida, which I'm very grateful for today because I've met all of you, my family, my true family. So I got to Florida and Scene came down and decided he was going to ask me to marry him. And so we had plans to get married. I'm excited, I'm happy. This is supposed to be the happiest time of my life. We're gonna get married on 10-10-10 because we had dated 10 years. And something else happened. On August 18th, the morning of August 18th, I awoke to this dream, this vision, you can call it whatever you want, of an angel who was wrapping its wings around a man that was laying face down on a bed. I could see a yellow t-shirt, I could see blue jeans, and I could see the bed, and that's all I could see. I couldn't tell who this man was. And then I saw the angel, and the first instinct in my mind was, oh my God, it's Michael, my oldest son, who is on his 4th or 5th tour in Afghanistan, and who himself was battling with severe PTSD. I had been estranged from him a bit, and understanding when he came back with PTSD, I understood why our relationship had kind of somewhat estranged at the time. And as this angel continued to lift this man from the bed, I realized, oh my God, this is Jeffrey. This is my youngest son, Jeffrey. And I just fell to the floor and I began sobbing. And my fiance looked at me and goes, what's wrong? I said, something has happened to Jeff. I feel it. I feel it in every bone of my body. It's Jeffrey. He goes, go call the hotel, because my son had gotten out of a rehab center. He had asked me to help him put him in a rehab. He got out, I put him in a hotel. And so I called the hotel and I said, I need you to go check my son's room. When they got there, which was about 3 hours later because they couldn't open the door legally without housekeeping, I said, I'm sorry, but your son is gone. So I prepared to fly to Michigan, and I got to my mother's home, and I was out in the backyard, and I was angry. I was so angry at God that I was yelling. I was fed up with my life, with everything that I had been through, and I just said, take me now, just take me. But there was a caveat, and I said, or change me, or change me. And in that holy, holy instant, there was something that came over me that was so profound. It was a knowing that nothing that had happened in my life meant anything, that it was wisdom teachings for me to get to the point where I am today. And in that moment, it catapulted me into awakening and into a point of my life where I just felt forgiveness for everyone, my ex-husband, my ex-girlfriend, everything that had come before, myself. I knew that this meant for me to let all of it go. And in that moment, I heard my son's voice saying, Mama, I'm sending you kisses from heaven. And I felt this brush on my cheek. And I heard it again, Mama, I'm sending you kisses from heaven. And I felt another brush on my cheek. And before I knew it, it was pouring down rain on me. And I began to have these mystical experiences that I didn't understand. I didn't know what was happening to me. Honestly, I thought that the fear that I had believed at some point that I was going to take on my father's disease had come into my life. And I'm like, this can't be true. And so I got on the plane after the funeral with let me back up just a minute. I was in the flower shop picking out flowers. I need to share this little experience. And I was thinking in my mind, I love yellow roses. And I couldn't find one yellow rose in the book. So I thought, okay, well, I'll get tropical. My daughter was in Hawaii. Jeff wanted to visit her. I'll get some tropical flowers. I walk up to the counter to order the flowers, and a lady comes up and taps me on the shoulder. And I turn around, and she hands me a package, a green wrapper. And I look down, and she walks out the door, and inside of the green package were 3 yellow roses. And things like that began to happen. At the funeral, my friend had bought blue balloons and 1 yellow balloon. And at the balloon release, everybody had let their balloons go. They were flying up in the sky, and I held on so tightly to that balloon. I leaned down and I kissed it. And when I let it go, it went so far, so fast. My girlfriend's like, oh my God, the angels have got it, because it literally went way up. I get on the plane to come home, and there were 2 seats next to me that were empty. And I remember thinking to myself, Jeff, you're not supposed to be up there. You're supposed to be here with me, next to me. And I leaned over and I buckled the seat. And as the plane, they closed the door, and as we got ready to take off, no one came next to me. And I heard my son's voice say, Mama, lay down, you're tired. And I got to sleep all the way home. And then shortly after that, my son's girlfriend, Chloe, who I consider very much like a daughter to me, invited me to start meditating. And so I started to go to meditation. And I made a meditation room in my house. I had this huge walk-in closet, so I began to meditate regularly. And then there was one Sunday where there was a spiritual teacher, leaders, written many books. His name was Michael Murdad. And I was so profoundly impressed with his talk that I bought a book and some of his CDs. And I invited Chloe to come and sit with me one day. And I invited her to meditate with me to one of these CDs. It was a healing CD. And the only thing I can really remember about it is the question that said, what has made you sad? And the only thing I could think of was Jeff. And in that moment, I saw Jesus come through Chloe's face. And I thought, oh my God, what's happening to me? And I didn't know what it was, but I had a friend tell me, Linda, that's called transfiguration. Look it up. And this is what it says. It says that transfiguration is presented as the point where human nature meets God, with Jesus as the connecting point, acting as the bridge between heaven and earth. So it was very profound. And shortly after that experience, there was an email that came through that invited, from Michael Murdad, inviting people to go on his final journey, his final spiritual journey to Italy, Greece, and Egypt. And I didn't know why, but I knew I needed to be on that journey. I didn't know how it was going to manifest. I didn't understand it. I called my daughter. I said, I don't know how I'm going. I said, doesn't matter if I quit my job. The pull is so strong that I have to go. And so I did end up going, and everywhere I went on that journey, I began to have mystical experiences. Like I would go into, the first night was in St. Francis of Assisi, and we stayed in the monastery. And I remember the next morning walking through the courtyard, and the bells went off, and my body stopped, and I just stood there, and I could feel the sounds like vibrating through every cell of my body. It was beautiful. I walked in town, and I was handed the prayer of St. Francis with a medallion, and it's like, you need this. And it has become one of my favorite prayers. I was in one of the churches in Italy, and there was a famous painting of Mother Mary. And I'm in the bookstore trying to buy a book, and the lady behind the counter only speaks Italian, and she's trying to hand me a photograph of this painting. And I'm like, no, no, no. And finally someone came in that spoke Italian and said, this is a gift, you need to have this. Again, both of those sit on my altar at home. But the most profound thing, and I could go on and on about all the experiences, but the most profound was the last night that we were on that journey. We were in Egypt in the Giza pyramid. And as we journeyed down, and if you want to bring up that one photo, we went into the lowest level, which we called the pit. And there is literally a pit with a rail behind it. And this is inside of there, and we sat along this rock ledge as we did meditation in there. And I can remember closing my eyes, and in my third eye, I saw a man walking toward me. He had like a brown kind of cape or robe with a hood on it. I could see sandals. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel fear around this. It was like a sense of peace. And as this man got closer and closer, he walked up, stood in front of me, and he turned around and sat and went into my body, and my body started swaying, and my voice started grumbling, and I'm like, and all I could hear was Michael Myrdad in the background saying, okay, we're gonna move to the next chamber, we're going to the Queen's chamber, and I was like, I gotta get out of here. And I stood up and I collapsed. The people next to me grabbed me and sat me down. So I hurried to the front of the line, and we went into the Queen's chamber. I don't remember much other than I felt completely out of body. We got into the King's chamber, and as we began to meditate, I remember hearing a voice again say to me, humble yourself. And I fell to the floor, and I laid my hands out and my head down on the floor. And within minutes, I was completely out of my body. And I could hear angelic singing. I could hear just this most beautiful music playing. And I heard a voice speaking to me saying, the man that entered your body was Jesus' brother James. And I heard the voice talk to me and say, the reason you have been learning about energy work is because you are a light worker. And I'm like, what is a light worker? Because I really didn't know. And your reason for being here, your purpose for being here, is to allow that light to shine, to work with that light for humanity and Earth. And so as I was guided to sit up on my knees and began to allow the light that was within me to activate and to shine around the earth, I'm bawling my eyes out. I was just blown away. It was the last night, and I really, because I didn't understand what had happened, I grabbed Michael in the airport and I said, this is what happened to me, you know? And he said, you're gonna be fine. He goes, you're just being guided, you're gonna be fine. And so at this point, I would just like to invite you to take a deep breath in. And if you feel comfortable, close your outer eyes. Take another deep breath as you envision yourself going deep into your heart space. Go deeper and deeper until you see a light, a spark within your heart. And envision that light becoming brighter and brighter until that light expands throughout your body, expands through every cell, between the spaces between the cells. This light is filling every part of you. Allow this light to radiate out around your body and fill the space around your body until this light illuminates this entire room. Can you see it? Say hello to the true you. This is you. You are light. You are not your body. You are not your story. You are not your age. You are light. I am light. We are light. We are love. This is our divine purpose, to allow this light to shine, to have a profound effect on humanity and planet Mother Earth. Let that light radiate.